The message arrived at 3:12 a.m., a single notification that sliced through the silence of my room. I almost ignored it, thinking it was another sleepless night spam text. But something about the unknown number and the trembling instinct in my chest made me open it. "You don't know me," it began, "but you deserve to know the truth your family hid from you." My breath caught. Every word felt like a match hovering above gasoline. And I knew, even before reading further, that my life was about to split in two. I sat up, heart pounding as if dragging secrets from the walls. The stranger claimed to have known my mother years before I was born. They hinted at debts, lies, and a betrayal buried so deep it reshaped our entire family. I wanted to delete the message, pretend nothing had happened, but curiosity tightened its grip. The more I reread the lines, the more my hands began to shake. A truth hidden is a truth sharpened, waiting to cut. And I realized this stranger wasn't threatening me, they were inviting me to uncover something. All my life, my family had been protective, careful, and strangely private. Questions about our past were met with redirected smiles or heavy silences. I thought it was tradition or trauma they didn't speak about. But the message made those silences look suspicious. It made every "you don't need to know" that echoed differently. I rose from my bed and paced the room like someone searching for an escape. Somewhere behind these walls, behind those memories, a truth was waiting. And I was terrified to meet it. Morning arrived with a weight I wasn't ready to carry. I stared at my mother during breakfast, noticing for the first time the cracks around her eyes. She looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before. It felt impossible to speak without revealing the storm inside me. So I stayed silent, watching how her hand trembled slightly when she picked up her cup. I wondered if she sensed the truth creeping toward us. I wondered if secrets could smell fear. I returned to my room and replied to the stranger, my fingers trembling. "What truth?" I typed, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted the answer. The reply came faster than I expected. "Your father isn't who you think he is." The words hit me like a blow, stealing the air from my lungs. The ground beneath me shifted in a way I'd never known. I felt like I was falling even though I was sitting perfectly still. The stranger asked to meet in person, insisting they had evidence. 1,000 warnings flashed in my mind, but something stronger pushed me forward. I needed answers more than I needed safety. I agreed to meet at a cafe in the old part of town. All day, my nerves twisted like a storm. I didn't tell my mother where I was going. I couldn't nod until I knew what I was dealing with. And so I walked into the evening like someone entering a battlefield. The stranger was older, with eyes that carried too much history. They introduced themselves as Daniel, a friend of my biological father. The phrase biological father felt wrong, heavy, impossible to swallow. He slid an envelope across the table, his hands trembling. "He never wanted to abandon you," Daniel whispered. "He thought he was protecting you." The words carved a space in my chest I hadn't realized was empty. Inside the envelope were letters handwritten, dated years ago, addressed to me but never sent. My breath caught as I touched the paper, as if touching a ghost. Each letter spoke of regret, longing, and a love my mother had rewritten. My biological father had tried to be part of my life, but something had stopped him. Something or someone. The betrayal stung like cold air against an open wound. My hands shook as I placed the letters in my lap. Daniel explained that my father had been trapped in a dangerous situation years ago, forced into hiding after someone close to our family threatened him. That someone, he said, was my uncle. I froze. My uncle, the man who attended every birthday, who taught me how to ride a bike, suddenly became a shadow with sharp edges. I couldn't understand why he would tear a family apart. Daniel's voice softened. He thought he was protecting your mother from danger, but he chose fear over truth. I walked home in silence, replaying every memory of my uncle with new suspicion. My heart felt like it was splitting between the life I knew and the truth I'd just learned. When I reached home, my mother was waiting, her face pale as though she sensed the unraveling. She looked at me like she'd already lost something precious. And maybe she'd lost the version of me who trusted her without question. I wasn't sure what to say, or where to begin. Without speaking, I placed the envelope on the table. My mother's face crumpled instantly, as if the past had finally caught up with her. Tears pooled in her eyes before she even touched the letters. She whispered my father's name, a name she hadn't spoken in years, with a softness filled with grief. And for the first time, I saw something deeper beneath her silence. Fear mixed with guilt, wrapped tightly around an old wound. It made my chest ache. We sat together, the room heavy with decades of unsaid things. My mother explained that she and my father had been deeply in love, but danger surrounded him. Threats came, fear grew. My uncle insisted that protecting me meant cutting ties entirely. She made the impossible choice to erase him from our lives. She believed she was saving me from a future filled with danger, but guilt had kept her awake for years, and now it was unraveling in front of her child. Her confession shattered something in me, something I had trusted without question, but it also softened my anger. She had acted out of fear, out of love, out of desperation. Love doesn't always choose the right path. Sometimes it chooses survival. I listened as she cried, her voice breaking with each memory. It was the first time I saw her as human, not just a mother, and somehow, that made the truth hurt less. I asked about my father, where he was, if he was safe. She hesitated before telling me he had passed away 2 years ago. The words hollowed me instantly. I had spent years believing a lie, and now the truth had arrived too late to change anything. My chest tightened with grief for a man I never knew but somehow missed deeply. My mother reached for my hand, and this time, I didn't pull away. We were both grieving different versions of the same lost person. The next day, I confronted my uncle. His face went pale when he realized I knew. He didn't deny it. He simply lowered his head like a man defeated. He explained that he had been threatened by the same people who hunted my father. He believed cutting ties would save us all. But power can twist the truth, and fear can make men cruel. As he spoke, I realized he had been living with his own torment, drowning in guilt he never had the courage to confess. I didn't forgive him, not yet. Forgiveness is not a door that opens the moment truth enters. But I didn't hate him either. I walked away knowing that healing would take time, and that time wasn't something anyone could speed up. My heart still ached, but it was an ache filled with clarity. For the first time, I knew where I came from. Even if the truth carried the sting of loss, it also carried a strange form of freedom. Days passed, and I slowly read every one of my father's letters. Each word felt like a thread connecting me to him. I learned his voice, his hopes, his dreams for me. He never stopped loving me, even from a distance he never chose. I cried reading his final letter, the one he wrote but never mailed, begging forgiveness for the silence he never wanted. It carved a small but permanent place in my heart, one filled with quiet strength. I began visiting the places my mother told me he loved: the lake, the old bookstore, the cafe where they first met. Each place whispered fragments of the life stolen from us. I didn't feel alone in those moments. I felt guided, as if his presence lived in the spaces between memories. Sometimes grief opens doors to connection we didn't know we needed, and in those quiet visits, I found a piece of him I could carry forward. My relationship with my mother slowly began to heal. We talked more, cried more, and rebuilt trust piece by fragile piece. She apologized often, but I told her she didn't have to. We both had wounds to mend, and healing wasn't about rewriting the past, it was about honoring what we survived. The truth had broken us open, but it also allowed light to enter places sealed shut for years. Every day, the distance between us grew smaller. One night, I sat with my mother on the balcony as the wind brushed against us. She told me stories she had never dared to say aloud, stories of love, danger, and choices made under impossible circumstances. I listened with a heart both heavy and grateful. The truth was painful, but it brought us closer than lies ever did. It reminded me that family is not perfect. Family is human, and humanity is messy, flawed, and often heartbreaking. The stranger's message had changed everything, but it had also given me something precious: clarity. I understood now who I was, where I came from, and what was stolen from me. But I also understood what remained: love, even in its imperfect forms. The truth didn't destroy us. It rebuilt us. It gave us a second chance to understand one another without the weight of secrets. And that was a gift I never expected. I visited my father's grave months later. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying a quiet peace. I placed the final letter on the stone, whispering the words I wished he had heard. I know the truth now, and I forgive you. My heart felt lighter, as if releasing a burden carried since before I was born. Grief doesn't disappear, but it becomes gentler when met with understanding. And in that moment, I understood everything. When I returned home, I felt different, stronger, anchored, whole. My life had been cracked open, reshaped by truths I didn't choose but needed. And now, the silence in our home felt warm instead of heavy. My mother and I began building new memories, grounded in honesty. The past remained painful, but it no longer controlled us. It simply became a story we survived together. The stranger's message, once a threat to everything I knew, had become the beginning of healing. Sometimes truth arrives like a storm, but storms clear paths that lies never can. The person I became after the truth was stronger than the person protected by silence. And in that strength, I found my purpose. Secrets may wound, but truth, no matter how dark, can set a heart free in the end. I learned that family isn't defined by perfection or blood alone. It is defined by the courage to confront the past, the willingness to heal, and the love that survives even the deepest wounds. My story didn't end with the revelation of a dark secret. It began there, and with every step forward, I carried both pain and gratitude, because knowing the truth, finally, had given me my life back.